working on the intake and the ducting for the intake. Now, I've decided the best place to put the ducting would be right in the middle here, between the two seats, sort of leant forward like that. If I just leave that there, oh, it's obviously going to poke up more than that, but so from the front of the car, it's sort of going to be up between the two. Now, I'm not just going to have a pod filter sitting there, I'm going to build a induction box over the top of it, so it's sucking from the middle here and getting as much air as it needs here. So what I've made first is this guy. Now, this sort of fills in this gap and has holes to mount up into the bottom of the air, and I have one tab on here that I'll have to weld to the frame there. But if I just pop that up in there, you can see it sort of sits on there pretty nice on its own, even without the tab welded on the front. It's actually got to go forward a touch. And then once it's there, I've got this so far, I've got one bend on here, and it slides down through this hole and then sort of leans forward like that. So I've popped these wee bits of tape here. Just to hold it in place temporarily. And you see it just clears the fuel rail down there and sits nice and centre. So I'm thinking that's going to be the final location. It's not the final filter, this one's a bit old and crappy looking, so this is a good mock-up one though, and I'll get a replacement for it. And then all I've got to do is do some piping from here, back through here, over top of our charge pipe, so there's a good gap here for it to come through, and then into our turbo here. It's come together pretty nice. Okay, so now I've got it sitting in there. I need to just trim a little bit just out of about there, because it hits this bar when you try and lift it out. And it's fine at the moment because you can sort of manipulate it over, but once it's one solid piece I won't be able to do that, so I'll fix that now, so that's not a problem. Then the next step on this thing is I'm going to try and use a different approach on this. And I'm going to use just this sheet of polystyrene. Don't know if it's enough, but all I'm going to do is start hacking into it and gluing it in to the gaps, and then that gives me something to then put the plaster on top of and then start sanding and shaping, and then from there I'll talk about the process after that. But yeah, that's how I'm going to get the general shape of this thing and make a huge mess with this stuff. This with some primer, and it's okay, but what's happened is just here it must have been pretty much exposed polystyrene, and it's kind of dissolved the polystyrene just a little bit there and just a little bit here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to hit it with a little bit of body filler, and hopefully it'll go up nice and quick and I'll be able to keep moving on this thing. So today, now we have it all dried. It's come out fairly good. I think this corner here was just a bit sharp for it, and it's sort of bulged a bit there, but that's the part that gets cut out anyway, so I'm not crazy worried about that. I might just put a bit more resin in there when I do this next part. So yesterday the time lapse stopped, but what I did was I sort of did one from this side and it got most of this side, and then I did one from that side and they overlapped a fair bit, and then there was a wee bit down here that was missing, so I put one there and one there, and then I went and put more over top, so then I put another whole sheet up the back and wrapped around here, and then the offcuts around here. So I think it should have 2 coats all the way around, and I'm going to try, it seems reasonably thick, I'm going to try and take it off from there, and hopefully it doesn't just fall to bits, but it's all learning if it does. Now I'm going to cut this right down the middle and try and pull one half off at a time. So, as you would have seen in that wee video, it didn't go quite as I thought. I thought I might pull off some, but I really didn't expect that the plaster would be sort of, it's gone all wet again. You could almost, like, it's all soft now. And and then you can see the polystyrene got affected quite a lot as well. So it's pretty lucky that it held its shape the way it did. But it has definitely held its shape, and it's thick enough for what we got to add more coats anyway. But it's thick enough to hold its form for now. It's pretty good actually. And I'm now going to have to go through and scrape and try and get all this plaster and releasing everything out of here. But it's worked though, because now I can just put these two halves back together, fiberglass them back together, and that's going to be my part there anyway. Hopefully I can get them back together without deforming them too much, but they're not. They're pretty solid actually. That the front here where it was kind of bubbled is kind of soft, but everywhere else is like maybe I could snap that if I squeezed it really hard, but I don't think so. It's pretty good. So I've just quickly gone and stuck it together from the inside with a bit of tape and lining up these seams. I'm going to be putting a bit of fiberglass in here too, where it's a little bit thin, but that seam should hopefully sit pretty nice, and I'll be able to do a good strip of fiberglass over top here and fuse this thing back together. Now that that's all set nicely, I've gone and attached this metal bracket with the threads that are going to bolt this thing down into the car where it sits, and taped it in because it was sort of bulging a little bit, so I've just used that tape to pull it in, and I'm going to now do the same as what I did on the outside, fiberglass the seam on the inside. So I'm also going to try bond this into here, so then this bracket's nice and strong for these threads to bolt up to the mount. This one's going to be a little bit fiddly down in the hole, but as you can see, I went and put a carbon fibre layer from one side and wrapped it around as much as it would. Then once the epoxy went like a gel and I could cut it without damaging the carbon fibre strand, I went and trimmed it right down the centre line of the scoop, and then flipped it over once it was fully dry, and then wrapped it back from the opposite side doing the same technique. Then that seam where they join in the middle, I sanded that back and it was wider than what I wanted it to be, but put a black stripe up the centre of the whole thing. Then once that was all done, I cut the hole in the front and cleared the whole thing with a 2-pack of clear. It looks really nice out in the sun and up close. But it was a little disappointing where the two sides join in the black. You can still see like where I've sanded the join. So I'm not too concerned. I'm not going to start over or anything, because I'm actually going to mount the high stop light into this scoop, and that should hide that part, and I'll be able to do a bit more work to it. Then I'll sand it down and flatten it out again at that point, and maybe do another clear. Alright guys, that's going to bring us to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. Hope you're enjoying seeing it. It's looking cool with the engine bay a lot more filled out. The scoop up there is a really dominant piece in this car, and the red carbon looks really cool. So it's making me really want to chomp in and get busy on some of the other panels on this car. So stick around, there's going to be lots of updates real soon. See you on the next one.